What if I told you there was a man who didn't believe World War II had ended, and kept fighting for nearly 3 decades after everyone else went home? This is the unbelievable, yet true story of Hiroo Onoda, the Japanese soldier who refused to surrender until 1974. A man so loyal, so devoted to his mission, that even time itself couldn't convince him the war was over. But beneath the admiration lies a much darker question: was he a hero of duty, or a man trapped by blind obedience? Let's find out. Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922 in Kainan, Japan. From a young age, he was disciplined, reserved, and shaped by a culture that worshipped honor and duty above everything else. In his early 20s, he joined the Imperial Japanese Army, but he wasn't a typical foot soldier. Onoda was selected for elite training at the Nakano School, a secretive military intelligence program where soldiers were taught guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and psychological resistance. His mission was simple, but absolute: never surrender, never die in disgrace, and never trust the enemy's word. In December 1944, Onoda was sent to the island of Lubang, in the Philippines. His orders: destroy airstrips, disrupt Allied forces, and hold out for Japan, no matter what. He didn't know it then, but that order would rule his life for the next 30 years. In the years immediately after 1945, Onoda's war turned deadly. Believing he was still defending the empire, he ambushed search parties, fired at local patrols, and even exchanged gunfire with American troops stationed nearby in the late 1940s. Reports claimed several soldiers and dozens of civilians were killed or wounded during these encounters, though exact numbers were never confirmed. To Onoda, each clash was a righteous battle. To everyone else, it was tragedy born from delusion. Japanese newspapers occasionally reported holdouts still hiding in the Pacific, but no one imagined one man could survive this long, so committed to an order whispered 3 decades earlier. The jungle had become his fortress, his faith unshakable, and every bullet he fired was proof of a loyalty the world no longer understood. By mid-1945, Japan was collapsing. Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been bombed, and Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. But deep in the jungle of Lubang, Onoda and a small group of soldiers never heard the broadcast. When leaflets were dropped announcing the war's end, Onoda studied them carefully and dismissed them. He believed they were Allied tricks, propaganda designed to lure loyal Japanese soldiers out of hiding. And in his mind, Japan would never surrender. His commander's final words echoed in his head: "You are to carry on the mission, even if it takes years." So that's exactly what he did. While the world rebuilt from the ashes of war, Hiroo Onoda stayed hidden, convinced that every rustle in the trees was an American patrol and every villager was a spy. For Onoda and his comrades, survival became a way of life. They raided local farms for rice, stole livestock, and lived off coconuts and wild bananas. At night, they patched uniforms, repaired old rifles, and waited for orders that would never come. Over time, their small group began to shrink. One was killed in a skirmish with local police. Another surrendered after finding a newspaper that showed Japan's defeat. Onoda refused to believe it. By 1959, only one man remained with him: Private Kozuka. The two continued their lonely war, burning crops, sabotaging warehouses, and avoiding capture for another 15 years. To the locals, they were like ghosts of a war long gone, appearing, vanishing, and sometimes taking lives. Some historians even say Onoda was responsible for the deaths of around 30 villagers during those decades. It's a dark shadow over what some call devotion, and it still divides opinion today. But Onoda believed he was doing his duty. To him, those weren't innocents, they were enemy collaborators. And this illusion would not shatter until fate intervened. In 1974, a young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki set out on a personal quest. He told friends he was going to look for Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. A few weeks later, deep in the Philippine jungle, Suzuki actually found Onoda. But even face-to-face, the old soldier didn't believe the war was over. He told Suzuki he'd surrender only if his commanding officer gave the order in person. So Suzuki returned to Japan with proof that Onoda was still alive, and soon after, the government tracked down Onoda's former commander, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi. Taniguchi, now a retired bookseller, was flown to Lubang. When he finally met Onoda, he delivered the long-overdue command, "Lieutenant Onoda, the war is over." "You are relieved of your duty." Onoda stood silently, then saluted. 29 years after World War II had ended, he finally surrendered. When Onoda returned to Japan, he was greeted with applause, cameras, and national pride. To some, he was a living symbol of loyalty, a man who embodied the warrior spirit Japan had long lost. To others, he was a relic of an era best forgotten, a soldier who had caused unnecessary suffering by refusing to see reality. Onoda himself seemed unsure where he belonged. The Japan he came back to wasn't the one he had fought for. Tokyo was filled with neon lights, pop music, and Western fashion. The samurai code he had followed was now seen as outdated, even foolish. Struggling to fit in, he later moved to Brazil, where he became a cattle farmer. In time, he returned to Japan again, running a survival school for young people, teaching discipline and perseverance, but never surrender. He once said, "I became a soldier to serve my country. What I did was for my own sense of duty, nothing more, nothing less." Even decades later, Onoda's story remains tangled in myths and controversies. Some claim the Japanese government knew about him much earlier, but ignored it, fearing embarrassment. Others suggest the legend of his unwavering loyalty was exaggerated to rekindle national pride in the 1970s. Historians also question the darker parts, the civilian deaths, the years of stolen food and raids, which Japanese media largely avoided discussing at the time. But regardless of what's true and what's myth, one thing is certain: Onoda lived and died by his code. When he passed away in 2014, many Japanese citizens still saw him as a symbol of endurance and commitment. Others called him a cautionary tale, proof of how dangerous blind faith can become. So what do we make of Hiroo Onoda? Was he a hero who stayed loyal against all odds, or a man trapped in a mental prison built by war and propaganda? Maybe both. Onoda's story forces us to question how far obedience should go. At what point does loyalty turn into obsession? And how much of our belief in duty is shaped by the world we're told to see, not the one that truly exists? For almost 3 decades, Hiroo Onoda fought a war that had ended long before. He lived through jungle storms, loneliness, and a world that moved on without him. In his mind, surrender wasn't an option, not until his commander said the words himself. And when he finally laid down his rifle in 1974, it wasn't defeat, it was release. Onoda's story isn't just about war, it's about conviction, the power of belief, and the thin line between honor and madness. Because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought with bullets, but with the mind's refusal to let go. If you found this story fascinating, hit the like button and subscribe for more untold World War II stories that history almost forgot.